Try that. Default, is it? Built-in audio analog stereo, let's try that. Default, is it? Built-in audio analog stereo, let's try that. Gonna lost our audience. Oh, have we? There's Dox's voice. I don't know. Is everybody still there? Have I lost anybody?
Adam said he said there's Doxy's voice. So
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay. Adam, could you just give us another okay, or somebody? Smashing. Okay, listen, we're going to have to start without the music. We're trying to be a bit posh with some nice background music, but that was a failure. So, hello, everybody.
Hello, what-ho! Welcome back to another exciting adventure of The Plain Truth. This is the second episode of One Bourbon, One Scotch, One Beer, just an open panel discussion. So, thanks, Mark, for trying to make this all work.
Not doing very well.
That's all right, I'm not worried about it.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, anybody that joins in or in the chat, if you want to join in the discussion, just let us know, and we'll try to get you the link for joining the panel. But I thought that we could just kind of talk around the table a little bit about science and horizon and perspective and apparent horizons and geometric horizons and whatnot. So one of the things that go ahead.
So going back a year ago, the globe apologists insisted that things went behind the X on the globe calculator, the Earth curve calculator. And now that the Black Swan has shown that's not what's happening, what's the tune they're playing now, Travis?
Well, I think that the language of the geometric horizon has come up that I hadn't heard in previous discussions. So it seems it's sense whatsoever.
No,
But
I haven't seen that. No, no.
no, yeah.
Can you see the screen, or are you driving?
I can look at it. Let me refresh it. Hold on. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I got it.
Okay, so this is the one that they've been showing us for the past 3 or 4 years, and the X horizon, and anything beyond that is dropping down into a hidden point from the viewer's point of view. But people have gone back over their back catalogue of photographs and found that they've been capturing beyond the horizon. It's now called the black swan effect. That there's loads coming up, so they can no longer use this X marks the spot where everything starts to disappear. And they're denying that they've ever argued it that way. But why does Mick West put that there anyway in that diagram?
Yeah, yeah. See, again, that vertical is the observer, right?
Yeah.
You look straight ahead.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
What's that? Eye level? Is that what that top line is? Eye level?
Yes, ILO. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Right. So that's what I was saying in the chat when Rumpus put this up on. I think he was on Ranty's show a while back, and he had his diagram of this. If you just flatten this out, like if you were to bring up that curve and make it a straight line, everything would remain the same in terms of what's on that curved tangent, but it would be straight out in front of you. So we say we see it because it's straight out in front of us. It's not apparent. It's right there in front of us. Now, what is apparent is the way refraction distorts the image. It can be.
Yes. Sorry, folks. I wasn't switching my mic on. So I'm getting messages saying they can't hear me. Hopefully, you can hear me now. Hopefully, you can hear me now, folks. They all heard you. Audio. Yes. You still there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Still.
I'm still. Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good man. So okay. So anybody on the globe side that wants to join us and explain what we're missing here? Can the audience? Can you hear both of us? Yeah. Can you folks?
So the point that I tried to make with Bob the What a couple of weeks ago was it's a misnomer to call the geometric horizon the horizon, because there is no apparent meeting of the sky and the earth on the geometric horizon. So it's just simply where your eye looks to meet the ground or the ocean that's in front of you. So if I'm looking straight ahead and I can see the horizon, but then I lower my eyes to cut that distance in half and I'm looking at the earth, if it's either aquatic or terrestrial, they call that a geometric horizon. But it can't be a horizon because if I cut my viewing angle in half and I'm looking at the Earth, there is no apparent meeting of sky and Earth at that angle. So I think it's a misnomer to call it a horizon. That's my criticism of that language.
Well, we'll have to wait and see if somebody can join us. Flat fact: is the sound still bad? Is it?
He just says white noise, but he can hear us both. It looks like that's what he means.
Yeah, that might
He
be.
can still hear us both, but there's white noise still.
That might be because we're talking on Skype as well. Skype can be very hissy at times.
Yeah, I've got white noise with in my headphones with you.
Okay.
Well, if we've got 3 whopping viewers out there, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you guys hit that Bonzarelli, give us a thumbs up, and if Flat Fact and if anybody else out there, if you've got the opportunity to join in and just shoot the breeze with us, then just let us know. We'll give you the link.
So, have you seen any martial law enforcements over the past couple of days, Travis?
No, I've just seen. I went for a walk around my town, and the signs were out by order of the mayor, social distancing, all that kind of stuff. But nothing that's harsher than that. So.
And you're not seeing the police pulling people over at all, more than usual on the roads.
Yeah, nothing more than traffic stops. I mean, I haven't seen any policy officers accosting pedestrians. Flat Fact says gone again, so I don't know what that means. Flat Fact, does that mean that you can only hear me? He gave a yes. That was too soon. I don't know if that's what that was an answer to.
My slider's going up and down. I don't know what the problem is here. Audio. Desktop audio. Mic default. Built-in audio analog.
Flat Fact said got up to straightening the line. I'm not sure what that means. Do you guys have any games that you play as a family, or?
Yeah, we've been we play cards or cribbage. Do you play cribbage in America?
Yeah, my mom and her husband, when I was younger, they would play cribbage, but I never got into it. I never learned how.
I got a text from that chess site that we used to play chess with saying, how about playing chess when you're stuck in your house? We'll have to start a game up again.
Now I've got feedback now with I can hear our conversation repeating. Did you do something different right now?
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah, I can hear us repeating ourselves.
One moment.
So it looks like we got 5 of you out there. Thanks for joining the show, and hope you stick around to listen. And if you are interested in joining the chat, we are just trying to talk about a little bit of the science of how we observe our world. Noah Monty on the show. I don't know if something just happened. And then now it's straightened out. Hey, I did want to ask you this. I see that there's text on the Mona Lisa kicking back. What did you put on there?
1 bourbon, 1 scotch, 1 beer, and the plain truth.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that's what it was.
The
white noise only coming from you.
I'm all right. I'm squeaky clean.
Well, again, that must be Skype.
It's Skype. It is Skype. Yeah.
Okay.
Next time you.
Hopefully, it's not too terrible.
Maybe on next Sunday we'll do a proper test and get Zoom working.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. So what about?
Did you do? Oh, go ahead.
So what about 5G? A lot of people saying 5G is causing this sore throat and temperature. How do you feel about that?
Well, again, it's only just data to take in and consider. I don't know if I can do this. I can hear myself repeating right now. So as soon as I start talking, I'll hear myself start talking,
Well,
like right then.
I've just turned my mic off, so it's not coming back through my mic.
Yeah, I can hear you repeat too.
That's probably the cell phone doing that, isn't it?
I don't know. Well, I wonder if maybe if I close the let me close the stream window. Check, check, check. Okay. I thought I had pushed pause. Maybe that was it. I think that was it. I thought I had pushed pause on the stream, so that's what it was.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, going back to the 5G thing, it's the whether or not it seems to me the whole coronavirus is just a description of flu, and uh, the parallel narrative is to be aware of the fact that the symptoms that correlate with 5G. I don't know that I'm not going to say that from what I understand, 5G isn't causing the coronavirus. Rather, it seems that they've started a narrative of the coronavirus and have given us an understanding of what those symptoms are. And the 5G narrative that so the media right now isn't talking to us about 5G. The 5G discussion is coming from the truth community, which has been going on long before the coronavirus discussion. So the coronavirus has only started since October till now. But the 5G discussion in the truth community has been going on for quite some time. And the description of what 5G produces in people is a mirror of the symptoms of the coronavirus. So the narrative is then that when they establish 5G and they turn on 5G and people start getting sick, they can blame it on the virus, and people won't be paying attention to the fact that 5G is up and running.
Another way of looking at it would be the flu starts where there's big populations, where people are mixing together, and the cellular industry is only going to start 5G in big populations. So it may just be that's the correlation. The population is the common thing between the flu and 5G.
And I think too, though, that you're going to have to, so it's not going to be a flu season anymore. It's going to be an annual flu pandemic, right? It's not just a season. It's not like the season starts in October and ends in March, and that's the typical time that people get sick and whatever else that storyline is for flu. But if you have a year-round epidemic of people having a flu, well, now it's no longer a season. It's an annual epidemic. And then if it gets to be worldwide, then that becomes a pandemic, right?
Yeah, there's a website I listen to, no, a YouTube channel called UK Column, where they do the alternative news. They're very good, very well researched, and they were showing just a graph of when deaths peak throughout the year, and there's always a higher peak of deaths in March every year, naturally, and that's happened every year. So again, we're getting information that's getting all mixed up. In the Observer, like the big British newspapers, they said last week that a 21-year-old girl had died of the coronavirus. A few days later, the information was that she actually died of a heart attack, which is very unusual for a 21-year-old. But it wasn't coronavirus. But people are still saying, oh, 21-year-olds are dying as well.
Can you do that again? So was it first attributed to coronavirus,
yes,
and then it came out that it was
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The information came out then a week later that she actually died of a heart attack. But it was put down as coronavirus.
Okay, so who did the mainstream media put
Yeah.
out the information?
Yes, they did. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then that's like someone who has a weak immune system who gets shot. Now, had they had a strong immune system, they could have survived the shot. They could have survived, being shot with a bullet. But because they had a weak immune system, they were killed by a bullet.
Yeah. That's right.
So she uh, she was diagnosed with having the coronavirus, and the coronavirus then caused the heart attack. It's like, again, that goes back to the HIV. People don't die of HIV. HIV weakens your immune system, and you can die of pneumonia. But you wouldn't have died of pneumonia had the HIV not been in your had the HIV not weakened your immune system.
I'm just looking up the article. Hang on. Yeah, nobody dies of the coronavirus. They die with it.
Right.
Let me just see
But then
that.
it gets labeled. But then it gets labeled as the coronavirus, and they wouldn't have died had they not had the coronavirus. So then the coronavirus is the bad guy still.
See if I can find it.
Yeah, Flatback said some of those towers are up to 18G. Is that 18 gigahertz? Flatback. Humans didn't create these radio frequencies; they are already here. Right. That's always been something in the back of my mind that I've thought about. Why have we, all of us, if our world is electromagnetic and there are electric frequencies or magnetic frequencies that are a part of our world, in my mind, they wouldn't be detrimental to our health. So once we put up radio towers, right? Once we started listening to the radio back in the 20s and whatnot, once those radios went up and we started putting out radio programs and music and things like that, um, those radio frequencies, were they detrimental to people's health?
Were you talking to me or are you talking to Flat?
Well, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I've got to sign a couple papers. I'm going to go on mute. But that was for you to
Yeah.
kind of pick up and go with.
Okay. You're going on mute, but you can still hear, yeah? He's gone on mute.
Yeah, that's correct. I can still hear, but yeah.
And it's just a brief. The Guardian newspaper. It's quite a big newspaper in the UK. It says that this is the death of a 21-year-old Chloe Middleton, the UK's youngest coronavirus victim. Her family believe has not been recorded in the official toll because of confusion about how she died. The Guardian can reveal. Middleton was taken to Wrexham Park Hospital in Slough last weekend after she had had a heart attack. Attempt to resuscitate her failed, and she was pronounced dead soon after arriving, a source said. And a Berkshire coroner said that the death was COVID-19 related after being told Middleton had had a cough, and the source said. But this surprised medics at the hospital, who have not recorded it as coronavirus incident. So if you don't see or hear of the clear-up information, you'll be of the impression that 21-year-olds are dying because of corona.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just outside shutting the doors of my trailer. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about making sure you read those follow-up stories and take into consideration that you have two conflicting um, sources of information where the people in the hospital say something like, well, we didn't associate it with coronavirus. We didn't associate with it, but then you've got someone else who's making that connection. How did you go back to the article and say that part again? You know the part I'm talking about? Right, right. So that would be a point of focus, to be aware that what the coroner stated isn't what necessarily the hospital associated her death with.
Yeah, and the papers are all about sensationalism anyway. And they always make an apology in a very small little paragraph a few days later, or a correction.
Right, on a page that no one's going to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hear a lot of sort of evangelical Christian churches saying this is the Great Tribulation starting. This is the wrath of God.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, but that's a part of the narrative because they believe that the Bible talks about the end of the world and
pestilences.
The every century, every half century says this is it. This is we're seeing. So it's like it's the whole thing that I don't know how to go about this. So if you back in the 1900s, you had a lot of end days predictions, and nothing ever came about. Right, we're all still here. So they always have to adjust. Right, we've had in the past 5 or so years, we've had a number of end times. The world is going to end and whatnot on these dates, and those never come to pass. And it's every generation, so to speak, thinks that they are in the end times, and every single one of them has been wrong. And the reason why they're wrong is because they think the Bible says something that it doesn't say. And that's been my argument. I was just I actually was in a nice healthy back and forth with Austin from Wits It Gets It. You know him? Wits It Gets It?
I don't know him, no.
He's the newest Globe Busters member.
Oh yes, I know.
Yeah. So Shelley Lewis made a comment about the Book of Revelation and the beast, and I made a comment on there with Shelley. I said, this is not what this is about. And Austin, challenged me and said, the Bible is clear. It talks about the end of the world as we know it. And I said, oh, great. Where does the Bible talk about the end of the world as we know it? And I put that in quotes. And, he couldn't produce any. First of all, he doesn't know the Bible, so he couldn't produce anything. But if you go and look at that thread, I think if you pay attention to it, you can see the fact that he's not answering my questions. And I said to this, and I said to him, if you make a claim, I'm going to ask you for your evidence for that claim. And he finally, when he asked me, he said, well, why don't you answer my question, blah, blah. So I wrote this. It wasn't a very long paragraph at all. And I woke up this morning and turned on my phone and went onto Facebook, and his last comment was, yeah, I'm not going to read that. Bye. And I'm like, what? Were there too many words for you? I mean, so, but yeah, the Bible does not talk about the end of the world. We are not in the end times. The end times in the New Testament terminology, the end times were talking about the end of Israel's relationship with God that started back in the Old Testament. It's a pretty long discussion to have, but
are you familiar with the Great Disappointment from 1844?
No, go ahead.
A Baptist preacher called William Miller. He started the Millerite movement, where the end of the world was coming in 1844. And apparently he was a great preacher, and lots of people, Methodists, Presbyterians, Baptists, Anglicans, were all taken in by it. And then 1844 came and went, and nothing happened. It's the same story.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I would be interested to find out what it was that was a trigger for him. What was the catalyst? Why did he think the end was gonna?
He was putting numbers into Revelation, into Daniel. Was it the so many days in Daniel's mentioned, isn't there? Or is that Revelation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Revelation does have a certain amount of numbers and days that they talk about, but I'm trying to think of
there's a little diagram here that the 69 weeks of years running from 457. I don't know how he got to 457.
Right.
Along with the 2,300 days, actually, which means 2,300 years, all came to coincide with 1844.
Right. Well, it's no different than the discussion that we have with science. When you aren't looking at the world correctly, you have to recalibrate your science.
Yes.
So, in the same way that if you aren't looking at the Bible correctly, you're going to have to recalibrate your terms. Well, one of the things that gets recalibrated with the end times discussion is the word generation. This generation will certainly not pass away until they see all of these things. And if you look at that term generation in the book of Matthew, every single time up to the 24th chapter, when Jesus says this generation, he's talking to the people that is his immediate audience. And
his contemporaries.
He's addressing them as this generation. Well, when you get to Matthew 24 and you see this catastrophic cosmological language where Jesus talks about destruction and the sun not giving its light and the stars falling from the sky, and Jesus says, I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass away until they see these things. Well, if you think that Jesus is talking about the physical sun, moon, and stars, and he says this generation will see these things happen, if the sun and the moon and the stars haven't fallen yet, well, then you have to recalibrate what this generation means. And so then this generation becomes, well, when the sun and the moon and the stars eventually do fall, that's the generation that Jesus was talking to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. The lead up to 70 AD, when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, that was what Jesus was talking about then, wasn't he?
Correct. That was the end.
Yeah.
The end of the age. The end of the ages.
But how did the sun, moon, and stars?
What if Jesus came as a prophet for America, and he says, "I tell you the truth." Let me go back a little bit, and Jesus says, after the tribulation in those days, he says, after the tribulation in those days, the sun will not give its light, the moon will turn to blood red, and the stars will fall from the sky, right? What if Jesus said, after the tribulation in those days, the stars and the stripes will burn? What would you think he was talking about?
Well, you could interpret that to be the fall of Washington, or the Capitol Hill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what's is your flag or the British flag termed the Union Jack? Is that the Union Jack?
To be more accurate, it's the Union flag. It's the Union of Scotland, England, and Ireland. When it's a Union Jack, it's being flown from a ship. So when it's on a ship, it's the Union Jack. But other than that, it's the Union flag. Yeah.
Yeah. So just replace the sun and the moon and the stars with the stars and the stripes, or the Union, or the Iron Curtain, right?
Yeah.
It's just simply a metaphor for a nation. And we need to understand that the Bible's metaphor for Israel was the sun and the moon and the stars. So when Jesus says that the sun and the moon and the stars are going to stop doing what they do, he's passing judgment on Israel. Israel would have understood that he's talking about us, because they knew that God referred to Israel as the sun and the moon and the stars. And, this isn't a Bible study, but if it were, I could, and if I wasn't driving, I could walk us through different places in the Bible where it's clear that the sun and the moon and the stars is a metaphor for nation, and they're either so the creation of the sun and the moon and the stars happened in Genesis 1, right? That's where God created the sun and the moon and the stars. That was Genesis 1 is a story of Israel's being created by God. And the book of Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 32, and the prophets also talk about Israel being created by God. Well, the only other thing that God created in the Bible was the heavens and the land, not the earth. Okay, the earth is an English word that is an interpretation of what they think the Bible is saying. They think that the Bible is talking about the physical creation of the sun and moon and the stars and the earth. And so, but the Bible doesn't have a concept of earth that way. The Bible has a concept of local proximate land, and the land that the Bible is concerned with primarily is the land of Israel. And so Israel is repeatedly referred to as God's creation. He created her. He brought her into existence for a particular purpose in his plan, according to the Bible. And so you have a creation story in Genesis. The end of the Bible ends with a decreation, right? And the Bible also refers to God's relationship with Israel as a marriage. He is her husband, she is the bride. And the way that the Bible doesn't just have, if the Bible only had one metaphor, it would make it a little bit easier, I think, to understand these things. But because the Bible has many metaphors for Israel's relationship with God, marriage is one of those relationships. How do you end a marriage? It's a divorce.
And
that's what
or a pillow.
Well, yeah.
Or murder.
Yeah. But also the other, I guess, severances, right? The other ways you can sever a relationship. The Bible talks about sons and daughters rebelling against their parents.
Yeah.
That is a metaphor, because Israel is also God's son.
Right.
Israel is also God's daughter, and she's a whore. But she's a priestly nation, and as a priestly nation, you keep yourself pure from anything that is defiling. And one of those defiling acts is prostitution. And it's not prostitution in the sense that we understand it, although that, I mean, there is and there isn't. That Israel in the prophets is described as a prostitute, and Israel is described as a donkey who is in heat, right? Yeah. And a donkey who is in heat goes around raising her tail up, saying, "Come get it, guys." And the prophets describe Israel like a horny or a randy donkey, just wanting to go out and just get laid. And that's the language that Israel's prophets use to describe the nation of Israel. You're a whore. You're a slut. And if you keep going along and you are rebelling, you are committing adultery against your husband. And that became a metaphor when Israel would go after other gods, right? God is your husband, and yet you're going after another god. You want a different husband. So the language in the book of Deuteronomy, primarily, the consequence for a daughter or for a wife is stoning and burning. Well, that's what happened to Israel in AD 70. Every stone was thrown down and she was burned. And that was the language in the book of Revelation as well, that the harlot, that's how the harlot would meet her end. And the harlot in the book of Revelation is the nation of Israel that Jesus went to as the final prophet and said, look, this day of judgment is coming. Your days are coming to an end. The only way out of this judgment is to follow me. And so all of the language in the New Testament, where, or in the gospel primarily, when Jesus talks about following him, he was calling people to, I guess, trying to think of, if you're not familiar with the Bible, it might not make sense to you. But
No, I understand what you're saying. There was when you
I know, but
when you first started to talk to me about this, so scripture came to my mind, but then I forgot it whenever I was trying to talk to you. But it's just come to my mind now. When John the Baptist was introducing Jesus to his followers, he said he saw Jesus coming and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." It's the world bit that I'd like you to explain.
Right. That's yeah.
It wasn't taking away the sins of Israel; it was the world.
No, that's incorrect.
No, okay. So, go ahead, correct me.
Yeah. Well, no. Okay. So again, that becomes an issue of translation. So the word "world" is an English term that carries a particular connotation to it, just like the word "earth."
Okay, so it was cosmos, wasn't it? It's cosmos, isn't it? And
correct. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. But let me just try to draw a parallel. So when we think of the word "earth" in a broad macrocosm, we think of the entire planet, the entire globe, to step on flat Earth toes. I don't know of any other term to describe it. Worldwide. When we think of the word Earth, we think of something that is worldwide. It encompasses all of the continents, right? So when you see in Genesis 1, God created the heavens and the earth, you're going to think of the entire system, right? If you're a heliocentrist, you're going to think of the globe. That's what the earth means. If you're a flat earther, you're going to think of all of the continents. But that's not the Bible's idea. The Bible's idea isn't earth. The word in both the Hebrew and the Greek simply means land. And unless it differentiates between the land of Egypt or the land of Babylon or the land of Assyria, right? So this is my pet peeve. When I had my Bible podcast, I would say you always need to translate these words the same each and every time. So if you are going to translate the Hebrew word eretz, if you're going to translate it as earth, translate it that way all the time. But they don't. They will translate it earth and land in the same sentence. And what that does is that brings a division in your mind in terms of, in this first instance, when you see earth, it means something more worldwide. But then when you see land, it narrows it down. That screws up our ability to understand the text. Okay, so now going into the word cosmos, again, the Bible is Israel-centered. Israel-centered. Cosmos simply means structure. Okay, how about this word? Matrix or paradigm, right? So when John the Baptist said, "Behold the Lamb of God, which takes away the sins of the matrix," okay, he's talking about the system with Israel. He's talking about that matrix. He's talking about that cosmos. Right, because you're structuring your face. Right. Well, when you talk about cosmetics, what does a woman do? She structures her face. She organizes her face. She builds a matrix around her face. And so that's all it means. The word cosmos simply means organized structure. And the organized structure that God established was Israel, was her relationship to him under the laws that we understand are Torah. So if you want to keep cosmos as the word world, you would have to have, I'm trying to think of the word, almost like a predicate nominative to go along with it to make a distinction. So, behold the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world of Torah. Right?
I get what you're saying.
Because Jesus didn't come to take away the sins of Egypt. He didn't come to take away the sins of Babylon. Babylon and Egypt weren't in a covenant relationship with God. That wasn't the world. So if you want to leave it as world, you have to understand that the word world in the biblical context simply means the world of Israel. Okay, so behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world of Israel. Or, for God so loved the world of Israel that he gave his one and only son. That's the context. It does not mean everybody, because Egypt wasn't in covenant with God. Babylon wasn't in covenant with God. God is not coming after Babylon for breaking covenant. He's not coming after Egypt for becoming an adulterous wife that he's got to now stone to death because she's spread her legs for some other king. Okay? That is exclusively what the Bible is about. The Bible is about God's relationship with Israel, and that's it. So everything else then falls under that. Every other nuance, every other phrase or terminology has to fit within that relationship. It doesn't all of a sudden become like, so the Bible is 99% about Israel, right? And then the last part that hasn't happened yet is about the world at large, everybody else. Like the end, the tribulation, we've all got to go through the tribulation. What? Why? Why make it more than what the Bible does? The Bible doesn't do that. So if anybody comes along, and again, I came out of this this heritage. I came out of this tradition, and I have come to understand that the Bible says something differently than what I was told, right? So as flat earthers, we rail against the indoctrination of the government, right? We've all been indoctrinated. We've all been told that the earth is a sphere and blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing with the Bible. You were told what the Bible means. You didn't start reading the Bible on your own and had no idea, and you came to those conclusions yourself. No, you didn't. You were told that the Bible talks about the end of the world. So that when you read those things then in the New Testament, that's the way you read them. This is talking about the end of the world. Or the sun and the moon and the stars. That's literal. Well, the sun and the moon and the stars are still up in the sky, so this hasn't happened yet. Well, if you think that that's what it means, of course you're correct. But what if you're not correct?
Okay.
I'm gonna go on mute real quick because I've been talking this whole time and I haven't been opening my trailer doors and backing in. So
Okay, no problem. Flat fact, I have been reading what you've been putting in the side chat there. It's very interesting about that, the Scottish rite of Freemasons. Commons Beaumont wrote a book. He died in 1956. His research showed that Edinburgh is Jerusalem. Arthur's seat, Mount of Olives, Scotia, came from the Faroe Isles. Okay, very interesting research.
Right, but when you do that, you have to sever certain parts of the Bible's story to get that story, right? So you make the Bible's language about the Mount of Olives or whatever about your culture. This is about us. Well, 100 years ago, they thought it was about them.
Yeah.
When Martin Luther, and he was wrong. Who was the Antichrist for Martin Luther? The Pope. So they thought they were in the end times. They thought they
Yeah.
were in the end times. Everybody thought they were in the end times
So what
because
about
they
the?
were.
So go ahead. The last
No, that's
chapter.
okay.
The
Go
last
ahead.
chapter in Revelation says that whosoever wants to, whosoever is thirsting, come. So who is the whosoever?
The Jews at that time.
Oh right. Okay.
The only the okay. So the metaphor that I use when I talk through this is the metaphor of the yellow brick road and the Emerald City, right? The the Old Testament into the New Testament is the yellow brick road. The Jews were supposed to follow the Torah. They were supposed to follow the Torah because the Torah was the path that God wanted them to follow in order to get to the Emerald City. When Jesus came on the scene, basically he said, the Torah, the yellow brick road, is coming to an end, and you've got to continue into the Emerald City. That's where life is. That's where water is. That's where bread is. If you don't go into the Emerald City and stay on the yellow brick road, you're going to die. So the whosoever part was Jesus, and was Jesus making an appeal to everybody who's on the road to continue and follow him. That's why he's like, I'm leading us into the kingdom. The kingdom is here. I'm bringing it in. And everybody who didn't want to go was of the establishment, the Pharisees, the scribes, and the lawyers, right? Because they loved the law. They had made the yellow brick road the end. But the yellow brick road was the means to the end. The way you get to the end is by leaving the road behind. But the Pharisees didn't want to do that because they had idolized the law. They had controlled their constituency by the law, right? They added all of these laws that were extraneous to the law itself and gave the people. Remember what Peter said in the book of Acts. He said when they were talking about wanting to bring everybody under circumcision again, and Peter said, why are you trying to bring those people back under a weight that we couldn't even carry? We couldn't even meet up to these standards, and you want to put everybody else back under those standards. But that's what the Pharisees loved. They loved the control that they had over the people because they made up all of these extraneous laws and said, we are the ones who know what these laws are, and you need to follow them, otherwise you aren't in the club. So everybody was like trying to do their best to do what the Pharisees said when the law was much, much more simple.
So about that flat Earth, then. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'll be right back. Yeah, I'll be right back.
So flat fact, you don't like. It doesn't sound like you're convinced. I think that's for another discussion anyway.
Hey, Mark, sorry about that, man. Listen, I've got to call into my dispatcher because there's a situation here with one of our trailers.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe just because it's just you and me talking right now and no one else has joined, which is perfectly okay, but maybe we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah, no problem.
And okay?
Good man.
Mark, thanks so much for doing this, brother. It'll work out one day. We'll get it nailed down and everything will be smooth as butter.
Thank you, my good man. And thank you to, I think Flat Fact stayed with us all the time.
Yep.
So good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.